Step back in time, not to a realm of chivalrous knights and fairy tale castles, but to an age of shadow and steel, where the very air was a harbinger of doom. Forget your romanticized notions. The medieval world was a relentless crucible, and you, a product of modern comfort, would not survive a single day. This is the story of our forgotten fragility, the price paid for the world we now inhabit. Chapter 1. The Unseen Enemy. Your first breath of medieval air would be your first mistake. It's a thick, noxious cocktail of animal waste, rotting refuse, and human filth, all simmering in the unpaved streets. The very water you crave, drawn from a communal well, is a lottery of life and death, teeming with cholera and dysentery. Every fly that lands on your food is a potential messenger of typhoid. In our world, we fight germs with science. Here, the germ is an invisible god, and its congregation is the dying. Your immune system, untested by such an onslaught, would be overwhelmed within hours. The simplest cut, a minor scratch you'd ignore today, would fester, becoming a gateway for sepsis. There are no antibiotics, no sanitized bandages, only a prayer and the encroaching darkness of infection. Your modern body is a pristine temple, woefully unprepared for a world that is, by its very nature, a cesspool of disease. Chapter 2. The Breaking of Bread. Hunger gnaws at you. You search for sustenance, but the concept of a stocked pantry is a fantasy for kings. For the common person, food is a seasonal, precarious treasure. The bread, your supposed staple, is a coarse, gritty loaf, often bulked up with sawdust, chaff, or even dirt. The meat, if you can find it, is a gamble. Without refrigeration, it's often on the verge of spoiling, its taste masked by a heavy-handed sprinkle of the few available spices. Forget your balanced diet. Here, survival is about calories, not nutrition. Scurvy, with its bleeding gums and aching joints, is a constant companion. Rickets twists the bones of children. You, accustomed to a bounty of clean, regulated food, would find your body quickly rebelling, weakened not just by hunger, but by the poor, contaminated quality of every single mouthful. The medieval feast was a rare exception. The daily reality was a slow, grinding starvation. Chapter 3. The Law of the Sword. You believe in justice, in rights, in a system that protects the innocent. Discard that belief. In the medieval world, law is not a shield. It is a weapon wielded by the powerful. Your life is not your own. It belongs to a lord, a baron, a king. A misspoken word, a glance held too long, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time could see you accused of treason, witchcraft, or heresy. There is no trial by a jury of your peers, only trial by ordeal. Can you hold a red-hot iron and remain unburned? Can you sink to the bottom of a river when bound and thrown in? Guilt or innocence is a matter of divine whim, or more often, the whim of the man with the bigger army. The social contract you take for granted is non-existent. You are a pawn in a brutal game, and your life is the currency. The slightest perceived offense could lead to the stocks, the lash, or the gallows, a public spectacle for the entertainment of the very crowd you are a part of. Chapter 4. The Weight of Steel. You walk through a village, and the glint of steel is everywhere. Not the polished steel of construction, but the sharpened edge of a dagger, an axe, a sword. Violence is not an anomaly. It is the default method of conflict resolution. A dispute over a chicken, a debt unpaid, or a perceived insult can escalate to bloodshed in a heartbeat. There are no police to call, no emergency services to save you. Your safety depends entirely on your own strength, your ability to run, or the mercy of your attacker. Bands of demobilized soldiers, little more than brigands, roam the countryside, taking what they want. A journey of a few miles between towns is a perilous expedition, fraught with the risk of ambush. You, who have never had to physically fight for your life, would be a sheep among wolves. Your modern sensibilities, your belief in dialogue and de-escalation, are a foreign language in a world that speaks only in the currency of force. Chapter 5. The Tyranny of the Mind. Perhaps the most insurmountable threat is not to your body, but to your mind. The world is small, dark, and drenched in superstition. The church, the supreme authority, dictates not just your spiritual life, but your entire reality. The universe is a fixed, hierarchical structure with God at the top, the devil at the bottom, and you, a sinner, trapped in between. Every storm, every plague, every stillborn child is a sign of divine wrath or demonic influence. There is no room for scientific inquiry, for skepticism, or for independent thought. To question is to invite accusations of heresy, a charge from which there is little escape. The psychological toll of living in constant fear, fear of God, fear of the devil, fear of your neighbor, fear of the unknown, is immense. Your modern mind, accustomed to freedom of thought and a world explained by reason, would buckle under the suffocating weight of this imposed, terrifying worldview. There is no therapy, no understanding of mental health, only the labels of madness or possession. Chapter 6. The Agony of the Body. Imagine the worst physical pain you've ever felt. Now, imagine it with no hope of relief. A toothache becomes a gateway to an agonizing, amateur extraction with unsterilized pliers. A broken leg is a life sentence of disability, if not a slow death from a botched setting. Childbirth, a beautiful event today, is a mortal terror for women, with a staggering rate of maternal and infant death. Every ailment, from a headache to appendicitis, is a black box of suffering. There is no anesthesia, no surgical precision. The physician is more likely to bleed you with leeches, believing your illness is an imbalance of humors. Your understanding of your own biology is a sin of pride. Here, the body is a vessel of pain, and suffering is seen as a test of faith, a penance to be endured. Your every modern instinct to seek comfort and alleviate pain would be met with a world that not only lacks the means, but often the very will to provide it. So, when you look upon the ivy-clad ruins of a castle, do not see a fairy tale. See a fortress built against a world of unimaginable hardship. See the ghosts of a million unrecorded lives, cut short by disease, famine, and violence. Our modern world, with all its flaws, is a fragile sanctuary built upon the foundation of their suffering. We are the descendants of the toughest, the luckiest, the survivors of a 1,000-year ordeal. And we have forgotten the true price of our security. To survive a day in the medieval world would not be an adventure. It would be a brutal, terrifying, and almost certainly final lesson in the fragility of human existence. Thank you for journeying with us into this unforgiving past. If this exploration of history's harsh realities resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that shaped us. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. You are standing in the quiet hum of the modern world. You are breathing air filtered by invisible technologies. You are protected by a seamless, soft membrane of infrastructure, law, and medicine. Before we descend into the abyss of the forgotten, I ask you one thing. From what safe harbor, from what bastion of light, do you witness this history? Tell me in the comments below, where and when do you watch? This is a journey not just backward in time, but inward, into the primal core of vulnerability. We are traveling to the time, the age of iron and fear, the medieval period. Forget the polished fantasy of tapestries and shining helms. We are going to the true Middle Ages, a sprawling, complex epic of 1,000 years, where the margin for error was non-existent. A world where the laws of nature and the whims of man conspired to make every breath a monumental act of survival. A time where your greatest enemy was not the dragon of legend, but the invisible microbe floating on the dust of the street. We will not merely observe the past. We will confront the absolute, terrifying frailty of the modern self when stripped of its technological armor. Prepare to face the unyielding power of the sun, the tyranny of the soil, the terror of the unseen, and the crushing weight of a belief system that defined existence itself. Chapter 1. The Biological Betrayal. The tyranny of filth and disease. The first step into the medieval town is a profound act of biological surrender. You enter a landscape where your most basic, fundamental human expectation, sanitation, has been violently suspended. The air itself is a weapon. Your modern body, fortified by 100 generations of vaccinations, antibiotics, and clean water, is woefully unprepared for the sheer, brutal biological density of life. The average peasant settlement, even a minor city, was a colossal, unmanaged heap of organic decay. The cobblestone streets are not merely dirty. They are a seamless, flowing ecosystem of human and animal waste, butchery offal, and stagnant rainwater. This is the invisible enemy. Imagine the microscopic landscape of a single medieval street corner. Every drop of water, every fleck of mud is a potent cocktail of pathogens: Salmonella, Shigella, and the constant threat of dysentery, the bloody flux. You are not just walking through grime. You are wading through the historical record of human elimination, a constant, low-grade warfare waged by the invisible microbe against your gut. Your modern digestive system, calibrated for sterilization, would be overwhelmed within hours. The sheer, overwhelming pressure of infectious disease is impossible to overstate. A common cold or a persistent cough is not a nuisance to be treated with over-the-counter medicine. It is a serious life-threatening event. Life expectancy, tragically short, was a consequence of infant mortality, a brutal, agonizing filtering process where half of the population often did not survive beyond age 5. Even if you were to survive childhood, your body would already bear the scars of constant viral and bacterial siege, leaving you permanently weakened. Then there is the water. The medieval mind could not comprehend the existential danger in a glass of clear, cold water. Wells were contaminated by groundwater seepage from nearby cesspits. Rivers, the supposed lifeblood of the city, were communal toilets, washing facilities, and the dumping site for tanners and butchers. To drink water was to gamble with life. This is why the common drinks of the age, ale, weak wine, and cider, were not indulgences, but necessary survival technology. The simple act of boiling the water in the brewing process killed the lurking bacteria. Your constant state would be one of mild, chronic inebriation, a necessary sacrifice to avoid the fatal alternative. Your teeth, those delicate instruments of modern vanity, are also a weakness. Without dental hygiene, without extraction and sterilization, a simple abscess in the jaw is a creeping death. The infection, once seated, climbs upward, spreading to the bone and the brain, transforming a minor pain into an inescapable, agonizing execution. This is the cruelty of the medieval. The simplest physical flaw becomes a catastrophic failing. And finally, the great, terrifying shadow that defined the age, the plague. The Black Death, which scoured Europe in the 14th century, was not merely a disease. It was an apocalyptic event that rearranged the very cosmology of human existence. It did not discriminate between the lord and the serf. It was the ultimate equalizer, the biological hand of a furious god. Imagine the psychological terror of witnessing half your village, your family, succumb to the agonizing, swollen buboes and the inevitable dark fever. The constant fear of the next wave, the next dark blot on the horizon, would crush the rational, ordered mind of the modern man. You would be broken not by a sword, but by the smallest creature of the earth, the flea carrying Yersinia pestis. Chapter 2. The tyranny of the soil and the sun. To live in the medieval period is to submit to the absolute dictatorship of the soil. Your existence is no longer measured by the clock, but by the unforgiving rhythm of the sun, the rainfall, and the perpetual, grinding demand of the earth. You are, in every meaningful sense, an indentured servant to the field. Forget the romantic notion of farming. This is brutal, backbreaking, and incessant labor that leaves no room for leisure, reflection, or illness. You are a peasant, a serf tied to the manor, and your entire purpose is to maintain the fragile, caloric engine of the feudal economy. The concept of a job change or retirement is a ludicrous fantasy. Your life is hereditary servitude. The sheer physical workload would dismantle the modern body in a matter of hours. The tools are primitive and cruel. The yard, the simple wooden plow, only scratches the topsoil. The deeper, more effective plow requires a massive team of oxen and immense, focused effort. Plowing a day's worth of land is a monumental task that would leave the modern desk worker crippled with spinal, joint, and muscle damage. The repetitive motions of the flail, the constant stooping, and the lifting of heavy sacks transform the body from a recreational machine into a compressed, aging instrument of pain. Your fuel source, the peasant diet, is insufficient for the task. Your survival is based on a monotonous, starchy diet of pottage, a thick stew of whatever grains and vegetables are available, often peas, beans, and oats. Meat is a rare, expensive luxury, often reserved for holidays or poached illegally from the lord's private lands. Your daily caloric intake is constantly at war with your caloric expenditure. The peasant body is always rationing, always in a state of low-grade malnutrition, resulting in stunted growth and chronic fatigue. This caloric trap is the most insidious killer. You must expend just enough energy to till the soil to yield a harvest, but not so much that you burn the calories you need to survive until the next meal. The margin of error is zero. A simple broken arm or a persistent fever means that your contribution to the collective is lost and your family suffers a crippling deficit. But the greatest tyrant is the weather. A drought is not a news headline. It is a death sentence for everyone. A summer hailstorm can obliterate a year's worth of meticulous, agonizing labor in a single, violent hour. This existential fragility creates a primal, unshakable fear, the fear of hunger. The memory of famine is stamped into the very DNA of the medieval peasant. When the crops fail, the social order collapses. People turn to eating anything, grasses, roots, even the tragic recourse to human flesh, as the desperate, final act of survival. You would be psychologically broken by the sheer, unyielding monotony of the labor, the endless cycle of planting, weeding, and harvesting. Your highly stimulated, information-driven modern mind would wither in the face of this simple, profound, and utterly predictable routine, a prisoner of the sun and the soil. Chapter 3. The Law of the Blade and the Lord's Will. In the medieval period, the notion of abstract, universal justice, of rights endowed by anything other than brute strength, was a dangerous fantasy. The law was not a written code. It was the Lord's will, enforced by the tip of a spear and the shadow of the gallows. Your life, as a peasant, is defined by your lack of legal personality. You are taxed, levied, conscripted, and judged by a single, arbitrary authority, the feudal lord. Your home is not your property. Your labor is not your own, the corvée labor tax. Even your children and your marriage are subject to the Lord's whims and financial consent. The justice system is a tool of oppression, not fairness. There is no due process, no appeal, and no lawyer. A trivial transgression, a minor theft due to hunger, or an accusation of poaching, can result in an immediate and agonizing punishment. Mutilation was commonplace, a hand for thievery, a tongue for blasphemy, ears for rebellion. These were not just penalties, they were permanent public markers, a walking, visible warning of the consequences of noncompliance. The stocks and the pillory in the village square are the constant, physical reminders of your precarious status. The local reeve, bailiff, is not a policeman dedicated to protecting you. He is an armed enforcer dedicated to extracting the Lord's taxes and maintaining silent obedience. But if the Lord's justice fails to reach you, the law of the road will. Outside the tenuous protection of the manor, the world is a dangerous, anarchic frontier. The forests and roads are the hunting grounds for outlaws, bandits, and deserters, men hardened by war who know only the language of violence and plunder. They view the peasant not as a fellow man, but as a soft, easy target, carrying what little bread they own. Your reliance on abstract societal rules for protection is utterly useless. And the greatest disruption to your life is the constant shadow of war. A king's ambition or a local lord's feud can instantly transform your existence. War is not fought by professional armies alone. It is fought on your land. Armies, friend or foe, will trample your fields, seize your livestock, and demand your supplies. The passing of a large force, even a supposedly friendly one, often means destruction, rape, and economic ruin. You are the collateral damage of history, a forgotten casualty in a conflict that means nothing to your survival. The psychological weight of knowing that your entire life, your family, your food, your very physical integrity, can be instantly revoked by the arbitrary decision of a powerful individual would crush the modern spirit. You would live in a state of perpetual, internalized terror, unable to speak, unable to fight, unable to flee. Chapter 4. The mythology of the Dark Woods and the soul. The greatest killer in the medieval period would not be a physical one, but a spiritual one. The modern mind, rooted in scientific materialism and rational discourse, would be psychologically destroyed by the absolute, mythological reality of the medieval universe. The world was saturated with the divine and the demonic. Science was not merely undeveloped. It was often viewed with suspicion. Every fever, Every crop failure, every successful hunt was an act of God, the devil, or the ancient spirits of the earth. This lack of rational explanation for natural phenomena transformed the environment into a spiritual battlefield. The church stood as the single, monumental, and terrifying authority. Its theology dictated everything: your waking hours, your marriage, your final destination. You were born into sin, and only the church could provide the necessary rituals and sacraments to secure your soul's passage through purgatory and into paradise. This created a profound, overwhelming psychological pressure to conform. The most terrifying aspect of this faith was the reality of hell. Medieval preachers painted vivid, visceral images of eternal torment, lakes of fire, demons with claws, and endless suffering. This was not a metaphor. This was a literal, absolute destination for the wicked. The modern person, accustomed to skepticism and secular humanism, would be forced to genuinely believe that every small deviation, every impure thought, could result in eternal, agonizing damnation. The resulting mental state would be one of perpetual, paralyzing anxiety. But beneath the cross lay the dark woods, the domain of the old gods, the ancient fae, and the spirits of the deep earth. The forests were not just collections of trees. They were places of mythological terror. They were the domain of witches, ancient spirits, and creatures whispered about only in firelight. To walk alone in the forest after dark was to invite madness and the loss of your very soul. This primal terror of the unknown would cripple your rational, modern mind. And then there is the mechanism of control, heresy, and ordeal. Any deviation from the rigid, public religious doctrine, a muttered word, a failure to attend Mass, an interest in unauthorized herbalism, could mark you as a heretic. The consequence was the trial by ordeal, where God Himself was expected to judge your guilt through fire or water. Failure to survive the ordeal meant the state had justly killed a heretic. Survival often meant a painful death anyway. You would be crushed not by a physical weapon, but by the overwhelming, supernatural pressure of the collective faith, forcing you to deny your own reasoning and submit to the absolute spiritual control of the age. Chapter 5. The Silent Killer, Communication, Time, and Identity. Your day would not end with a global connection or a hot shower. It would end with the realization of profound, terrifying isolation and the complete dismantling of your cognitive framework. Your modern identity is built on instantaneous, global communication. In the medieval age, you are confined to a 3-mile radius around your village. Anything further is a journey of weeks and a perilous risk of death. News travels slowly, distorted by fear and rumor. A war might be declared 300 miles away, but its true impact will only reach you months later when the tax collector arrives with new demands. You also lack the fundamental framework for living, the concept of linear, objective time that governs your modern life. Time is measured not by the clock, but by the church bell, the rising of the sun, and the agricultural cycle, matins, vespers, harvest. Your life is cyclical, bound to the earth's rhythm, not a progressive march of technological advancement. Your future is merely a repetition of the past, devoid of the modern sense of personal progress or historical trajectory. The loss of agency is absolute. Your entire purpose is dictated by your birth. You cannot choose your work, your partner, often needing the Lord's permission, or your home. Your body is owned by the Lord. This lack of personal choice, this profound, inescapable servitude, would be the final psychological breaking point for the modern person. Your mind, built for the limitless horizons of the information age, would atrophy in a world confined to the radius of your village. Chapter 6. The Stone Mirror. The Weight of Unremembered Suffering. So, we return to the core question. Why wouldn't you last a day in the medieval? The attrition of existence. It wouldn't be the dramatic battle, but the small, relentless attrition of life. The constant ache from the poor diet, the parasites, the untreated chronic pain, and the unremitting fear of famine that is always one failed harvest away. Synthesize the threats from the previous chapters: the filth, the hunger, the arbitrary justice. B. The anomaly of comfort. The greatest killer is the lack of options, the utter void of personal agency. Your mind, built for the limitless horizons of the information age, would atrophy in a world confined to the perimeter of your manor. Reflect on the miracle of modern life: the clean water, the freedom to travel, the right to dissent. C. The Final Testament. The medieval age is a mirror showing us what happens when the fragile layers of technology and sanitation are stripped away. Our greatest triumph is not the skyscraper or the spacecraft, but the simple, continuous supply of clean drinking water and the collective agreement to abide by an abstract rule of law. Never forget the impossible fragility of the warmth and order we inhabit. Your comfortable life is a hard-won anomaly, purchased by the forgotten suffering of millions who lived and died beneath the tyranny of the bell.